Hello, friends, and welcome back to Malicious Compliance Stories. Where do Karens get off thinking it's okay to talk to people like this? Even if she had spoken to an employee, please and thank you go a long way. But before we begin, best way to support our channel is to leave comments, like, and subscribe with the turned on bell so you don't miss the new video every single day. Here we go. Talk to my boss. This happened last weekend while I was only involved from the sidelines. Okay, I may have started it unintentionally. I was there through the whole thing. The cast, me, tall guy, and Karen. I went to my local blue big box store to pick up a few grocery items. Not a big trip, but it had to be done. Now, I'm a short woman, 4'11", and it never ceases to amaze me that most of the things that I want or need are always on a top shelf designed for people who are at least 5'10", from my limited point of view. The only way I can reach these items is if I have something long enough to rake it off the top shelf, or if I use the shelves as a climbing wall. Considering that I'm not a lightweight by any stretch of the imagination, I don't try climbing in favor of keeping the shelves upright. I swung down an aisle and found what I was looking for on the top shelf. Since the item was in a glass bottle, raking it off the shelf seemed like a disaster waiting to happen. I stood there for several minutes trying to decide if this was something I could do. Without when I spotted a very tall guy. Tall guy had his own shopping cart, was not dressed like a store employee, jeans, black button-up shirt, no blue vest, and was looking at his shopping list. My interest was in the fact that he was towering at around 6'3". I approached him. "I'm sorry to bother you." Tall guy had this look on his face like he's ready to say, "I don't work here, lady." Tall guy, "Yes?" I tried making myself as meek and apologetic as I could so that he didn't think he'd encountered one of those people. "Can I borrow your height to help me get something off the top shelf?" Tall guy grinned, nodded, and asked what he could get for me. I pointed at the item, and without so much as a struggle, he retrieved it. I smiled politely and thanked him profusely for helping me. I put the item in my cart, and he started to walk away. Then she made her presence known. She was about 5'4" and had on heels that were easily 4 to 5 inches high, around 45 years old, pudgy, rolls around the middle, and wore a blue sparkly dress that was at least 3 sizes too small, and so short if she took a deep breath, we'd all get a view of her belly button. She honestly looked like she was going to a nightclub, not grocery shopping. 1:30 in the afternoon. "Karen, now that you're finished with her," she said this while looking down at me as if I smelled like a week-old fish, "you can get these for me." Karen attempted to hand Tall Guy her shopping list, but he put his hands up and backed up a bit. Tall Guy, "I don't work here. I was only helping get something." Karen, "Exactly. You helped her, and now you help me." I swear she batted her eyelashes at him. Tall Guy, "No, I helped her, and now I'm going to finish my own shopping." Karen rolled her eyes and tried to shove her list at him. "I'm not stupid. Of course you work here. Why else would you—" Again, she scrunched her face in disgust at me. "Help her." Tall Guy, "Do you really believe that people who work for a living are only working to serve you?" Karen couldn't decide if she should nod or shake her head. I could almost hear the gears in her brain strain for a response. Karen, "It's your job to do what I tell you to do." Tall Guy, "No, it's my job to do what my boss tells me to do, and not once in 14 years has my boss ever told me I had to do your shopping." Karen, "Oh yes, it's your job. You work here, so you work for me, and I'm telling you to get these items on my list now." Tall Guy stepped closer to her, reached in his shirt pocket where he had his white clerical collar, snapped it on, and plastered on the biggest grin. "In that case, you need to get down on your knees and talk to my boss. I think the two of you have plenty to discuss." Karen's face went deathly white. She took very fast, shuffling steps out of the aisle. I just stood there with my mouth open. Tall Guy removed the clerical collar and tucked it back in his shirt pocket. Tall Guy saw my amazement and adoration of what he'd just done and grinned. "Oh, don't look so impressed. I'm not clergy. I do improv comedy with a small social group of friends." He patted his shirt pocket. "This week's theme is church. I just came to get snacks on my way there." Me. Now I'm more impressed. I so want to be like you when I grow up. Tall guy and I parted ways, and I didn't see him or Karen again. For some reason, however, I have this strange desire to watch stand-up comedy on TV. That was a wholesome moment between you and Tall guy. He scared Karen good. To be honest, no one should treat an actual employee of a store that way either. And our second story. Fine, I'll follow the rules to the book and go home with pay. So now I've left my old job, I feel like I can finally share the story. I drive trucks and was doing job which just wouldn't get done if everybody followed all the red tape. It's kind of the place where you sign all the paperwork stating you'll do it this way, but the reality is you can't, but that's fine because the paperwork is there just to protect the company from legal recourse. Now, I'm not saying we all did dangerous stuff, but it was just little things that made your work a little easier and more efficient. Well, all of a sudden, the company started to enforce every policy. What really annoyed me, though, was that you never knew which policy they had decided to start enforcing until you got asked to see a manager and told you were being put on performance review because you'd been observed on CCTV. What was more annoying was the supervisors would report you for something petty, but then the next day be asking you and expect you to do something that was far more dangerous and risky than the thing they reported you for. Things like you'd be reported and put on performance review for leaving your keys in the truck for a few minutes on Tuesday, but then on Thursday you'd be expected to use a tail lift in a public area with people walking under the lift with a 1-ton pallet on it. This despite the fact that the company policy states that tail lifts should only be used outside of store opening hours. So I started to follow the rules explicitly. My daily hours went from being around 10 to around 12 or 13, but my ultimate FU came when they decided all PPE had to be signed out by upper management. Before this change, they had a cupboard full of stuff like gloves, high-vis jackets, and most importantly for this story, steel toe cap boots. If you needed something, you just asked a supervisor, and you'd have a new pair of boots within a few minutes. Well, on a Friday, I noticed my boots had broken and the sole was separating from the boot. I left for work on Saturday morning telling my wife that I'd probably be coming home because I knew upper management only worked Monday to Friday, so no new PPE could be provided. Sure enough, after showing the supervisors and manager on duty my boots, they couldn't get me any. They spent about an hour trying to find me some, but eventually told me I'd have to go home without pay. I told them that I've turned up to work and that I'm willing to work, but it's the company's responsibility to provide their staff with PPE and that it isn't my fault if they can't provide any. After a while of refusing to back down, the manager went to go call someone in the legal department. He returned saying I would be sent home for the weekend with full pay and some new boots would be provided to me on Monday. What's more, one of the supervisors told me that I should tape the boot up with tape and that if I didn't, he'd report me to upper management. I also put in a grievance about this conversation and said supervisor was suspended from duties involving other members of staff. Thing is, before the company started to get petty, on Saturday morning, I would have just set off for work 30 minutes earlier and got some cheap boots myself on the way to work, but they honestly eroded any goodwill I had left, and I was past the point of caring. I had a nice weekend, though. When you think mankind couldn't get any stupider, you read stories on Reddit. Glad you got out of that crap show, OP. And our last story. Our new neighbor thinks she owns the building. Anyway, I, 31-year-old female, live in a block of 6 units, apartments for non-Australians. A month ago, the unit above mine went up for sale and sold fairly quickly, and the new owner moved in less than a week ago. This morning, I got up and went to take the rubbish out and found a note stuck to my door. I honestly thought it was a I'm new to the building kind of note, you know? Oh, I could not have been more wrong. Dear tenant, I recently bought your building and wish to introduce myself. My name is blah blah blah. I'm not going to put her actual name. And I think you'll find me a fair landlord. However, I do have rules. Everyone is to be in their units by 9 p.m. If you're going to be out past this, I suggest you find accommodation elsewhere. No pets allowed. If you have any, they must be relocated before I do an inspection or I'll call the ranger to remove them. This is the only warning. I'll conduct an inspection once a month and you'll be present to answer any questions or face eviction. Failure to pay rent on time will result in your eviction. If we all follow these rules, I'm sure we'll get along. Sincerely, blah blah. What the F did I just read? Fun fact about my building. We all own our own units. Nobody actually owns the whole building. I won't lie, I got to the number 2 and had a slight panic attack because I have cats and there's no way I was giving them away. Before I remembered, we bought our unit just before Christmas. We rented it from a friend prior, and when she told me she was thinking about selling it, we bought it. Didn't even have to move. So in some ways it still feels like renting, but we actually own our unit. Now, I'm not great at confronting someone. I tend to shake a lot, but at that moment I was quite angry, so I went upstairs and knocked on her door. You know that gut feeling you have? It was spot on. That door opened, and there stood a Karen, her hair blonder than my own, her nails long and bright colored. She didn't look happy to see me there. I introduced myself and explained that I lived downstairs and that I wanted to talk to her about her note. She started to talk over top of me, explaining that her letter was basic rules and even a child could understand it, and if I didn't like her rules, I could hand in a letter to vacate. Wow. I would ask if people are really this up themselves, but I work in retail and could answer my own question. I told her that I actually own my unit, she hadn't bought it or the rest of the building, but only her own unit, and that she couldn't enforce anything in her note. She didn't like that at all. She started yelling at me, saying that yes, she had indeed bought the whole building, and that failure to comply with her rules would mean I would be evicted. I was just starting to think maybe I was wrong when another neighbor opened his door. He came out and asked what the issues was about, and could she stop screaming as he worked nights and was trying to sleep. I told him I was trying to explain that she hadn't bought the building, and she started yelling again. My neighbor told her to stop, and then said the best thing I heard that day. "Are you stupid?" Her jaw dropped as he explained to her how wrong she was, and that he was, in fact, part of the strata committee, kind of like an HOA that oversees the building, and that she had no right to make rules for everyone. She gave us dirty looks before slamming the door. I thanked him, and he said in the entire time he lived there, he hadn't seen someone so entitled. Part of me wonders if she tried this thinking she could make things to her liking and figured people would be too scared to question it. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.